It is well known that Disney used to have an internal rule to cancel all of its shows once they reached 52 or 65 episodes for corporate reasons. But then, why was Dave the Barbarian canceled after only 21? Hi, I'm Dr. Panda, the only panda who studied magic alongside Uncle Oswidge, and in this video, we're gonna talk about Dave the Barbarian. We'll look back at what the show was about and explore why Disney abruptly canceled it. And yes, we'll also talk about the sad case of Dave reruns that Disney relegated to dead of night time slots, almost as if they were deliberately trying to make sure as few people as possible watched it. But not everything was bad after the cancellation, and in this video, I'll also tell you why. Let's get started. Dave the Barbarian was an animated Disney series that first aired on January 24, 2004, and whose final episode premiered on Toon Disney on January 22, 2005. Exactly 365 days after its debut, considering 2004 was a leap year. The show was created by Doug Langdale, who's also known for creating The Weekenders, and for writing on countless iconic childhood shows like House of Mouse, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, Ozzie and Drix, and Darkwing Duck. Yeah, Mr. Langdale is an absolute legend. The series takes place in the kingdom of Udragoth and follows Dave, a super muscular yet extremely cowardly barbarian who lives with the massive ego of his older sister Candy and his monkey younger sister Fang. And yes, I'm ashamed to admit it took me a while to realize that Fang's caveman-like look was meant to emphasize her wild nature. I used to think she just wore a bone in her hair because it looked cool, don't judge me. And about Candy, I always had the impression that after Dave's parents fled to battle evil, Candy became the queen of Udragoth, but none of the episodes I could find directly addressed that role of hers, and the only thing the intro says is that now she's the boss, not necessarily the queen, although she does get a crown. Does anyone know if she actually became queen? Let me know in the comments because I haven't been able to sleep for days over this question. Look, I even have bags under my eyes. In the castle, there's also Uncle Oswidge, a clumsy wizard whose spells usually bring more trouble than joy, and there's an actual reason for this. In the episode Sorcerer Material, it's revealed that he never actually went to sorcerer school. He just worked in the cafeteria, which explains his, let's call it, beginner-level skills. Alongside them are two non-human characters who, as far as I know, appear in every episode and add a ton of charm to the show. The first is Faffy, the family pet. Basically, he's a small, overweight dragon who's also pretty dumb. How dumb, you ask? According to the narrator, his IQ is a single digit. The second is Lula, Dave's sarcastic, enchanted sword. She might be my favorite character in the whole series because she's usually the only one who realizes how stupid everyone else's ideas are, and her sense of humor is just perfect. Also, fun fact, Lula's name was changed to Lulo in Brazil to avoid confusion with then-President Lula da Silva. The show also featured some very colorful villains, the main one being Chuckles the Silly Piggy, a self-proclaimed Dark Lord whose biggest dream was to conquer Udragoth, and who possessed plenty of magical powers thanks to his amulet, like telekinesis and shape-shifting. And while researching for this video, I was surprised by what I found about him. Turns out Chuckles was actually a pretty hated character among some fans who thought he was too dumb and unfunny, which is wild to me because I always found him hilarious, especially because of the irony that he's this tiny adorable piglet who desperately wants to be taken seriously as an evil supervillain. Another antagonist that stands out to me is Ned Frischman, a social misfit from 1994 who works at a pants factory. Thanks to a radioactive zipper, he manages to travel back in time and tries to conquer the world using game guys that make everyone addicted, but he's eventually defeated by the characters who don't have thumbs, Lula, Faffy, and Twinkle the Marvel Horse. And if you don't remember this last one, Twinkle is Candy's colorful talking horse who's always depressed and has premonitions about dark forces that nobody pays attention to. Ned makes his second and final appearance in the episode I Love Neddy, where he once again travels to the past and tries to conquer the world using a joke book. To do this, he first goes from club to club doing stand-up, and later creates his own sitcom called I Love Neddy, which makes him the most beloved person ever. That is, until Dave and his family invent the first reality show in history, Real Life Barbarians, which becomes so popular that it even goes on tour traveling all around the world beating Ned in the ratings, who's finally defeated by Dave with Tickles. The series stood out because of its distinctive tone of absurd humor that juxtaposed both the ancient and the modern, showing us a medieval world where, for example, shopping malls exist. Within that absurd humor, there were also moments when the characters broke the fourth wall, either talking directly to the audience or complaining to the narrator about the plot. I always found that hilarious because it wasn't something that common in cartoons at the time. I mean, there's even one episode where the narrator makes fun of the show's low budget.
Heroes defeat the Muffin in an exciting battle, which we can't show you because it would be much too expensive for a cheap show like this.
This didn't just stop at jokes. There's actually one episode where the entire plot literally revolves around breaking the fourth wall. I'm talking about episode 16, titled A Pig's Story, which, interestingly, is the only episode in the whole series that consists of a single 22-minute segment, instead of the usual 2 11-minute ones. In this episode, Chuckles the Silly Piggy realizes that all of his defeats have one thing in common: the narrator, who always tells stories where Dave wins. So, Chuckles kidnaps him and forces him to read a script where he finally defeats the Barbarian and his friends with the help of giant pretzel men, even causing the show to have a brand new intro.
Silly piggy, the silly piggy, silly piggy, the silly piggy, the Dark Chuckles, the silly piggy.
But right before Chuckles can finish Dave off once and for all, the narrator gets laryngitis, which makes auditions necessary for a new one. Several candidates do their takes on Dave the Barbarian tales, ending with one who improvises a story where Chuckles is defeated in space. Man, Dave the Barbarian was just too good to last, wasn't it? Why can't we have good things? So, if the show was so creative and original, what happened? Back then, Disney usually produced 52 or 65 episodes per series for corporate reasons, which I talked about in my video on why House of Mouse was cancelled. But in the case of Dave the Barbarian, only 21 episodes were made, not even half of what Disney shows typically got. Why? One of the biggest problems the show faced was its irregular scheduling, which honestly was almost offensive at times. Let me explain. According to the Disney Channel broadcast archives, the series had a strong premiere on January 23, 2004, airing its first 5 episodes back-to-back in a solid time slot from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., which shows how much confidence Disney had in it. Episodes 6 through 11 aired weekly at 5:30 p.m., still in a pretty solid slot, but from then on, things completely fell apart. Episodes 12 and 13 also aired weekly, but now at 4:30 p.m., marking the first time slot change that, while not too drastic, already hinted at Disney's growing doubts about the show. Right after that, there was a 5-month hiatus before episode 14 finally aired, and this time at 9:30 p.m. on October 2nd, 2004, a much more noticeable shift from the earlier afternoon slots. That 5-month gap is particularly strange to me because Dave the Barbarian only had 1 season. So, what happened during that break? Why weren't there any new episodes? After episode 14, there was another pause of almost 3 months before the series came back, now airing 1 episode per day on December 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th, all back to the 4:30 p.m. slot. But the worst part was yet to come. Let's talk about the final 2 episodes, numbers 20 and 21. I know they first aired on Toon Disney, but I couldn't find the exact time slot for those premieres. What I did find, though, was the date and time of their first airing on Disney Channel, and honestly, it's infuriating. By the way, if you're as nostalgic as I am and want to revisit Disney's classic animated shows, I've made several videos breaking down why some of them were canceled or the reason they're not available on Disney+, so feel free to check those out after this video. Now back to Dave the Barbarian. The Disney Channel premiere of the final 2 episodes happened during the absolute prime time of children's television, 4 a.m. That was sarcasm, by the way. 4 a.m. is a terrible slot for any TV channel, let alone a kids one. Let me repeat that. The series finale of Dave the Barbarian aired at 4 in the morning, which means Disney Channel literally banished the show to the lowest viewership slot possible they had available. Let that sink in. And that wasn't even the only time Dave occupied that dead of night space in Disney Channel's schedule. The show continued to have reruns for several years, but always at the most inconvenient hours imaginable. The last time the series ever aired on Disney Channel was on December 28, 2009, 5 years after the show's premiere. It was episode number 3, and it aired at, you guessed it, 4 a.m. So even though Disney was still pulling Dave the Barbarian off the shelf 5 years after it first came out, it's pretty clear the show was being used more as filler content than as something the network genuinely wanted people to see, which is a real shame. The thing is, Disney clearly did have faith in the series at first since they gave it a huge premiere with 5 back-to-back episodes. So, what went wrong? Maybe Dave the Barbarian's greatest strength ended up being its downfall too. If we take a look at Disney Channel's lineup in 2004, we'll find animated shows like Brandy and Mr. Whiskers, The Proud Family, or Kim Possible, alongside live-action comedy hits like Lizzie McGuire and That's So Raven. And there's a reason for this. At the time, Disney Channel was going through a major transition where the network was trying to cater to two very different audiences at once. On one hand, it wanted to remain the go-to channel for younger kids, hence the animated series that fit that demographic perfectly. On the other hand, it was starting to push more live-action shows aimed at pre-teens and early teens. Dave the Barbarian fell right in the middle of those two Venn diagrams. Its absurd, self-aware humor was a bit too weird for younger viewers, who probably just found it confusing or offbeat, but its over-the-top cartoonish visuals made it less appealing to the teen audience. So even though the show was genuinely clever and funny, the shifting identity of Disney Channel at the time sadly might have worked against it. I've always thought Brandy and Mr. Whiskers had a somewhat similar type of absurd humor, so at first I didn't understand why they got 39 episodes while Dave only got 21, especially since they both premiered the same year. But looking back, I think the brighter visuals and faster, more physical comedy style of Brandy and Mr. Whiskers helped it survive a bit longer, even if just barely. During my research, I came across a Reddit post where someone asked what had happened to Dave the Barbarian, and surprisingly, the show's creator Doug Langdale himself replied, and his answer pretty much confirmed my theory. Everyone at Disney loved the show, it just didn't have good enough ratings, and to be honest, it didn't quite fit in on the Disney Channel. Another question that came to mind was related to the number of episodes produced. Like I mentioned earlier, for corporate reasons I explained in another video, Disney used to produce at least 52 episodes for their shows, but Dave the Barbarian only got 21. Why such a specific number? Brandy and Mr. Whiskers had 39 episodes, American Dragon got 52, Recess 65, and Kim Possible made history by breaking the 65-episode barrier and reaching a whopping 87. But what do all these have in common? Well, as it turns out, their first seasons always consisted of 21 episodes. It was during the second, and sometimes third season, that the total number was adjusted to reach Disney's usual production targets. So, if we want to look at the bright side, Disney did at least produce a full season of Dave the Barbarian. Also, not everything was bad news after the show's cancellation. In that same Reddit reply, Doug Langdale shared that thanks to the show, he met an adult fan named Candy, and they've been together for over 16 years now. Which honestly feels like the perfect happy ending Dave the Barbarian deserved. At this point, you might be wondering why the show isn't on Disney+. Well, I had the same question, so I actually tried reaching out to Doug Langdale to ask if he had any idea, though I honestly didn't expect a reply. That's why I was genuinely surprised when he actually answered. And while he doesn't have a concrete reason, he assumes the general explanation for cases like this is they didn't think putting Dave on Disney Plus would make them money. I really hope Disney reconsiders and lets us enjoy this early 2000s gem on the platform someday. I also took the chance to ask Mr. Langdale if he knew why Dave had been relegated to those 4 AM time slots, and while it sounded familiar to him, he said broadcasters usually don't communicate those decisions to the creators, which honestly feels kind of disappointing, and hopefully that's changed by now. Another iconic early 2000s Disney show is House of Mouse, so I made a video ranking the top 10 best episodes from that series. And of course, I couldn't leave out the one where Hades tries to woo Maleficent dressed like a certain mouse with red pants. If you're interested in the full ranking, you can check it out right here. Subscribe for more. Dr. Panda out.